Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice. I'm the sex whisperer on the podcast movement. And today we're going to talk about the body and the history of the human body and all the shit we've done to it in our effort to kind of like regulate, I don't know what, procreation, its power. Anyway, so I want to welcome my guests. I have Elsa Marie Keefe, who is a nude artist, and she'll tell us all about what that means. And she also organizes women's groups now based in New York. She's based in New York, but hopefully they'll be spreading everywhere.
Definitely.
And they're called Just Naked. So for now, it's Just Naked New York City, where women get together naked and find healing in just being able to sit with their bodies, uncovered. Mm-hmm. Yep. and unveiled. And my other guest is Maurice Dumont.
That is correct.
And he's a musician. His band is called Supergirl, so is his Instagram handle. And he is a feminist, a father of two girls, and sometimes cross-dressing hetero male. Right.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think identifies more with the feminine than the masculine. So we'll, speak to that as well. So welcome.
Thank you.
The reason that this episode was important to me, and the reason that I think it kind of makes sense in this moment, is that I feel that there is confusion out there in both men and women as to what's like the right way to approach, sex. We have like super thankfully, gotten past those endless thousands of years where like women were property of men and that was that. And, if you married somebody, they could rape you for life. Right. All the fact that the years where the woman's body was just a means of exchange, mm-hmm. An object to be traded from father to husband or whatever. So with these different waves of feminism, and now most lately with Me Too, men have come around and, have embraced a change in consciousness where they understand and respect the concept, at least, of consent, even though it seems a little, confusing to them. And they, the verbal consent, not just like how they read the physical body, but verbal consent. And they understand and kind of like are proud, about like the need to please the woman that they're with, which again is like super new. Like we found the clitoris like not even a century ago. Mm-hmm. So with all of this stuff, and there's a lot more change. Science is changing everything. So we understand our brain and how it works much better, literally every day. So we have better ways to kind of like hack our minds and retrain our thoughts and our habits, including our sexual habits. We also have like, DNA tests. So like everyone can know whose kid is what, so like the need to like, hide the woman and lock her up, so like the kids are yours, is obsolete. So here we are, and it's a time of opening, and I'm interested to have you speak to like two different like portals that you have each like accessed and opened and are on that give us ways to kind of like re-understand our physical, bodily existence, our sexual energy exchange, and our power exchange and power dynamic, from like the cliche dominant stuff that is our social conditioning, because we grew up with it, to what makes sense to us now, and we want to practice but find it hard to do like in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so you want to go ahead, Elsa?
Sure. Yeah, do you want me to just kind of talk about what I do and my background?
Yeah, talk about, being a nude artist and a nudist practitioner, and also, your mom a little bit. I think she's
for sure.
really cool.
Yeah, so I
unusual.
Exactly. Definitely a lot of what I do now and how I kind of came to be who I am today is a lot because of my family. I'm very close with them, and I grew up in somewhat of a nudist environment, and I'm not, it wasn't like a nudist colony, and we weren't constantly walking around naked, but compared to most of America and most Americans, it wouldn't be a big deal if we didn't have clothes on, and we would go camping and live in the woods for a lot of the time in the summers, where we would definitely be clothing optional and be in places of extreme beauty, be swimming naked and sunbathing and going to our favorite place, Wilbur Hot Springs in California, which was clothing optional. So I've always had that kind of background of being free, and if there's not a better way to say it. And my mom's also an astrologer and a holistic healer, and she's kind of been transitioning through those realms over recent years and creating more of her own signature business practice right now. So we're working together on a lot of different things. But so I grew up in a very...
Well, you grew up without the shame that most of us get from our parents.
Exactly.
Like, oh my God, cover yourself up, close your legs.
No, you were very fortunate.
Right, I know.
Most people are not exposed to
exactly.
it. Right? At least here in the United States.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm so thankful. And like the older I get and the more I experience, the more people I meet, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I had such a perfect, idyllic childhood and upbringing. And I ended up getting into, I guess during middle school, high school, I had the normal, wanted to cover up my body all the time, felt super self-conscious, because I think that's just what a lot of young adults feel. And then...
it's all brand new. It's
it's brand new. Yeah, exactly.
Pubes. You're like, who am I?
It's just, that's normal. So, I definitely went through that phase. Mm-hmm. But then, I still had like a good friend of mine in high school. We went like naked kayaking. And I did still feel like a little bit liberated and like to have like experiment and have a little bit more fun with just like playing around with social norms in the body. And then when I got to college, I was really focused on, fashion and aesthetics, and I'm always been very visually oriented. So, doing art since I was a young child. I also didn't have a TV growing up, so my mom would always give me art supplies and say, this is what you can do to pass the time if you're bored. Like, we're not going to turn on the television. So art has always...
That's beautiful too, because that like spurred you a bunch of more of the social conditioning.
Well, exactly. And that was, I think, her goal was just so like I didn't have...
church, no TV.
Exactly. So yeah, our church was pretty much nature and like being out on the land and going on different trips. And I grew up on the seashore on the north of Boston. So again, it was like just taking in so much beauty all the time and always having like nature and art as my way of coping and getting through everything. And so, for me, art has always been my therapy. And then when I got to university, I was focusing more on fashion and majored in communications, and also just to get a better understanding of, why I didn't have a TV growing up and why I was so sheltered. I just wanted to know more about like commercialism and consumerism and all of that. So
but it's also, Elsa, that you vibrated with that, because some people may growing up be raised under those conditions, not necessarily enjoy them or even continue them as they become adults.
Well, and I didn't. I definitely like rebelled at a certain phase and like went through different stages of, where I was not appreciative of such a healthy, nurturing environment. Like, especially when I was like a preteen teenager, it was like a little bit hard mentally. And then when I got to college, I like really took a step back, because when I was an athlete my whole life and I meditated and I did yoga, and when I got to college, I stopped meditating and I became very unhealthy. Like, I pretty much had a Adderall addiction that I decided to have by choice, which then, turned to other types of drugs. And it was just like this hard few years where I was just struggling with my identity and like trying to be normal.
Well, that's you like individuating. And
just trying
like
to
exactly like, separating yourself from your parents,
right?
Because they were so healthy.
Exactly. But
you had to try
I had to try it and find out for myself, right? It's like one thing to take advice, but you have to, you have to go through your own journey.
Gotta, and it's good.
But I'm very thankful, like coming out on the other side, just like really, really appreciating health now, and like actually knowing like both sides of the situation with the body and the mind. And during college again, so I was focused more on fashion and commercial work, and then I went through kind of a depressed phase, which I think a lot of people in about 20 years old, you're going through that like existential crisis.
Right.
Sometimes earlier, but yeah.
Right, sometimes earlier. Like, yeah, I mean, it's ongoing. I think since I was 6, I was going through that same problem. But like, again, I just having that like low phase, I was down at South, so it was kind of a weird environment. I was not used to, Southern culture. And I ended up falling into the fine art photography department at my school at Elon, and just became obsessed with it, started spending hours and hours and hours in the building every day, like more so than any of the majors. And that's when I really started getting into photography, which then took a turn from like lingerie into nude photography, because I'd be in critiques and my professors would say, why are your models posed that way? Like, why are they wearing that bra and underwear? Like, what message are you trying to send? And I thought to myself, you're right. Like, what message am I trying to send? I'm not trying to, propel the porn industry or like people's body image issues, which, there's a place and a time for all of that. But I was like just starting to realize my own narrative was much more about, purity and being natural and being free and just embracing the nude body for the beautiful, natural thing that it is. And so that's when I started doing naked photography. And it started with self-portraits and also working with my close friend and soulmate at the time. And then I just got really good feedback, started getting scholarships to conferences, and just all of a sudden, like, I never wanted art to be my career, but that just happened. Like, I started, again, just being flown places and people buying my art, and it just, one thing led to another. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, that's my life, is naked photography, and it's developed into different realms.
Oh, yeah.
I personally like the political side of it because, we have had like a long history really since the beginning of art, where like the naked female body is the muse, right? Like, even in the cave walls in Neolithic times, it's the naked, like fertile goddess, right, that they're scratching. So, throughout we've had the naked form, but it's always idealized.
Exactly.
And it's like on the wall, and it's in a frame, and it's and we've had always like this dichotomy where it's either that, idealized like Madonna figure, or it's, the whatever you want to call it, I don't want to say the W word, but, of porn. So, and there's nothing in between. Yeah. We don't have the model in between.
Yeah.
So like what I love about your story, about the idea that you're a nude artist, is not so much the photography, which I'm sure is great, but which is familiar, but actually the practice where you're like, let's bring women together and, hopefully men will do it too. Yeah. And to be naked and get to kind of familiarize themselves and feel comfortable with existing and doing whatever, eating, drinking, talking, meditating, without the need of this covering up.
Exactly.
Of parts of the body that seem, really completely arbitrary unless you're in sex space.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my whole narrative, is, again, like normalizing nudity. And that's when I was fortunate enough to come into contact with a group called Just Naked NYC since moving back to New York City a few years ago. And they asked me to do women's groups for them because a lot of their groups were attracting basically 30 men on average to every 3 to 5 women. And so there's just a huge discrepancy in male and females coming to these open nude events and being nude in public and in these spaces where it's not a sexual space, but there's a lot of connotations around sex when you do see the nude body. And so that's, again, why I do the work that I do. I'm so passionate about it, is, again, there's nothing wrong with sex. It's a beautiful thing, but there's a time and a place for it. And like, when you see a naked body, in my mind, you shouldn't automatically think of sex. Like, we should be able to go to a nude beach and there shouldn't be people being turned on everywhere. Like, it's a very natural thing to be naked and be in nature or be in your home. One thing does not have to equal the other thing. So
yeah, to my mind, that's like one of the goals of feminism, and one of the ways to kind of like smash the patriarchy or shake up the system, know, because it's the naked female body that kind of for reasons that are inherited and learned has that reaction, like if we women go to a nudist beach and we see a bunch of naked men, especially if they're not erect, which is like the symbol for procreation, we don't think of sex. We just don't, But we probably ourselves are more conditioned to see through like the male gaze.
Yeah.
And we may get more turned on, or at least think thoughtful of sex when we see the naked women on the nudist beach, because that's where the feeling of like taboo or violation kicks in, right? And the feeling of like exposure.
Yeah.
But like when you think about it rationally, like clearly you couldn't have sex with like all these people arbitrarily just because they're naked. So the power is in the numbers, right?
Yeah.
The more people who are naked, the less that concept is functional.
Right.
No, you know what happens too, that the negative feelings of the naked body, that's something that I don't think a baby feels shame. So I believe that as humans, that's something that other humans teach us to feel, but it's not necessarily anything that is tied into it, in my opinion. I mean, those of us that, like you, Elsa, that you've been fortunate enough to not have attached any negativity to your body.
Right.
I mean, you got lucky. Most people have not been so fortunate.
Yeah.
So they do associate some type of judgment with taking their clothes off, or even the way they see others. But there should not really be any, ideally, but it's a different thing when you put it into practice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have some of that, like we all do. I mean, I didn't grow up in a literal cave. Like, of course, I was out and about, exposed to different magazines and publications and different visual content that, you know, I have struggled with my own concept of beauty, and I have struggled with my own body in its own way, but that's what's been so exciting and healing of a journey just for myself, like overcoming the stigma around, you know, fat and skinny and size, and just really, really, especially now, like being in my very late 20s, almost 30, like really embracing my body and being true to myself, because my whole thing is body positivity and really trying to promote everybody is beautiful. And I'm a very big fan of like shooting, you know, I have people come to me from all walks of life and ask to be photographed. And so I never have somebody send me a picture first. Like, if you have scars, if you have hair, if you're 500 pounds, if you're 20 pounds, like, I don't care. I want to work with you and capture the beauty that's within you. And that's really the message that I'm trying to spread. And then when that comes back to me, because I do self-portraiture work and modeling as well, especially when I don't have a subject to shoot and I'm in a beautiful place in the world, you know, I have struggled with looking at myself in these pictures, and it's been a very beautiful journey just to finally look back and look at these pictures and look at myself and be like, okay, well, you're beautiful. Like, just really trying to, you know, walk the talk, as they say, and like believe what you're telling other people. So that's been a huge part of my recent journey, and it was really healing time.
That's
liberating, you know, women, especially since you do women's groups, you know, liberating them from like whatever feed we're getting from like the heterodominant or you know, the dominant culture media.
Exactly.
And it's so hard to do.
Exactly. And you mentioned the male gaze before too, and that's like something that I really am so proud and excited that like I'm able to add to the spectrum of the female gaze. And I think there's more and more women photographers taking hold of their power and standing in their power and taking on these roles of photographing other women and photographing men for that matter, and not having, and being able to see these pictures and know that like there was a woman behind the camera and it wasn't a man who was potentially trying to objectify her in the wrong way, you know. So
even though, I mean, I must say, because I know, you know, I have a lot of friends who are women photographers. I'm sure you do too. And what happens, interestingly, is you get paid for the photographs that look satisfactory to the familiar, you know, male gaze.
Totally.
And you can't like sell the material that doesn't, you know. So that becomes quote unquote art, and maybe no one will buy it. You just, you know,
that's like a whole other conversation
but
itself.
That's like the power of, you know, they're still holding that ultimate power. So we, you know, we really need to understand it and unite and support each other and support what we think is, you know, is fair.
Well, you know, an audience can only consume what they are provided, and you know, and they're the people that make these choices. I mean, nowadays anyone can make a record at home, so the subject matter doesn't necessarily need to be there to please anybody except yourself, right? It's just that these kids that come up listening to these things, they want to emulate their heroes maybe, and if they listen to a majority of content that is not so, I don't know what you call it, respectful maybe? Because I think it's just plain disrespectful to objectify anybody, not just women, but men also. They want to be like their heroes a little bit, you know? So it depends what you're exposed to. Nowadays, the truth is you can bypass everyone and do things on your own. Publish your books yourself, release records on your own, make art on your own. So you don't really need to.
Well, I mean, this podcast is an example of that. I think your work is an example of that. I don't make any money from this podcast. We were just talking about, the same happening to you. So this is our choice and we're here. But we're not an opera. That's what I'm saying. They don't give us that accessibility that they give to the ones that are fitting the stereotypes.
Right.
So, and the only way to change that is for us to find each other, and then everyone out there, whoever it is, to kind of spread the word and try and be conscious and try and
That's the beauty of social media too, though,
exactly.
and that's what when we can use the power for good versus evil.
Exactly. Social
really,
media is ours,
and there's power in numbers, and if you stick together and you find one another, and again, it's kind of a dance. It's like I was telling my friend the other night, life is like a game. If we all learn to play a role, and unfortunately sometimes that means keeping your mouth shut for a few minutes or a few seconds longer than you would like to when you want to speak out for yourself, but really trying to take the time to build a network and build your brand, and then slowly, even maybe play into the system a little bit and create or release an image that perhaps isn't your favorite, but is aesthetically pleasing in order to get the attention of the people you want. And then when that attention is gotten, then you can speak your truth in a much more powerful way. So
I agree with you 1,000%.
Maybe you guys, I don't know.
That's just part. It's just part of my thoughts. I don't know.
No, we may not have the numbers now. In my opinion is that even if you're just touching one person, really, that in your behavior and the way you think, that's already making a difference.
That's true.
I know we don't have Oprah numbers. Who knows? Maybe we'll get there.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, Well, no, the message is not that, we're doing this, we're in it, I'm just saying that it's good for us and our listeners to be aware of this because it happens, It's the power of the existing system is exactly that. It can take any protest movement or rebellious act, let's say, being nude on Instagram gets you blocked and taken down, or being nude on some beaches can get you arrested, whatever. It's crazy shit.
Exactly.
So even though it should be completely legal, so taking, kind of sharing this message that the more of us who hear it and understand that it makes sense and kind of go with it and find it elsewhere and share it, the more it becomes stronger, because it's not going to be, empowered by the powers that be who who want things to stay the way they are.
Yeah.
And that's that.
And I think we're on that brink of change too. I mean,
Truth.
we talked about astrology.
we talked about
the age
it.
of
We think
Aquarius
so.
is coming. I think it's a matter of time. As long as we're patient, so much is changing, and there's so many people with like-minded people out there now.
I think so too.
It's just patience.
That's what we are. But also, that's all the people we know. Honestly,
I know.
We find each other.
All of our friends.
Yeah. It's true.
So Maurice, tell us a little bit about your story and how you started as a Latin male, young man in a culture of toxic masculinity, right? Machismo.
Yes.
And now you are more and more feminist.
Yes. I've always
You
been.
are a feminist.
Yeah, I've always been.
Yes, you identify.
You know that how uncomfortable it is to be born into this gender, into this nationality maybe, and almost be ashamed of being that just because of the stereotypes. Because I've never been a person that feels he's better because I have more partners, or if I'm misleading 5 or 6 women. I mean, that to me is a source of shame, really. So it's almost like I had to work harder for people to know me and not prejudge me just because I'm male, just because I was born there, because
in Colombia.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's really bad. You do grow up seeing most males in your family in that type of environment, having multiple relationships outside of the marriage. Most of them abusing some type of alcohol or some things like that. Most of them being violent, and really most males disrespecting women all the time. It is a rare person that, as a male, that can maybe not behave that way. You're sometimes seen as less of a man if you do not claim to have 5 women outside of your regular girlfriend or your wife, and that's just plain.
And they're more or less used like as sperm receptacles. Right?
Well,
and status symbols.
In the language, it's just disgusting to me, because most of these people that speak this way and they feel more whole, they're the first ones that are really possessive, really jealous, and they could not even stand of even thinking that someone can do this to them. And it's maybe the basic principle of treating another how you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And so when you're born into these situations, it's really either you get out of the society pretty much, which is what I did. I mean, I'm grateful. I left when I was 11. My mom came to Miami. She said that Colombia was too dangerous, which it was. I was able to grow up here, and then being raised by a single mom really changes your point of view. You see the struggles, you see what she went through, what my aunts, my grandmother, because most women go through the same things. And my mom was pretty much cast aside because she left her husband, which is my dad. But I mean, she was the brave woman that did that. Most women remain in those relationships. Now, I've also had many friends. I've had more girlfriends, friends that are women than male friends. I just can't be friends with too many men, apparently. But I dislike the fact that they themselves are chauvinistic themselves. They put themselves in a position that is not equal. And in my opinion, I mean, I really believe that women are superior because most women are more in touch with their feelings. You're usually more open. Now, women have it very difficult as a whole. You guys, for example, have to worry about safety concerns, how your niceness is perceived by the other gender, because most men believe that if you say hello and you're nice to them, that you want to have sex with them, which doesn't make sense to me. But I understand I'm not the average person. So you grow up in these environments, and it's a bit dark when you disagree with the way most people behave. But again, you can, by being different. I've had many girlfriends that have told me that I was the first male friend that I had that did not want to hit on them, did not take advantage of them when we went out partying or they were drunk and I had to take their clothes off and put them to bed. And, that was so sad. And most female friends I've had some type of sexual abuse by a male. It's so standard, it seems. It's not like a rare occurrence. And that's really sad.
No. It's super standard. Yeah. And if you take until literally like our generation, we didn't even understand date rape. We didn't have a word for it, We didn't understand like sexual assault, harassment at work, none of that. It was like just, survive and get through it. Or, if it's an acquaintance, well, it's assumed that you should have not gotten to their apartment or whatever you did. Or, if it's a boss, then you just kind of like ignore it and let it happen so you don't get fired, So women existed in like survival mode when it came to their bodies for thousands of years. So it's really hard to do that kind of like, shift, turn on the switch and say, okay, the meanings actually, are different. And we're only figuring that out now. And we have to look back and think of our lives, our mothers' lives, and re-understand them, in this way that's more conscious and enlightened.
Of course. Now it would be very it would be very pleasant to believe that those things have stopped, but they haven't. Anytime, it seems to be many important men that are being found out or revealed as abusers, rapists, manipulators, their power, their fame, their money. The victims are almost exclusively women. It shouldn't be this way. I mean, you as a gender, you shouldn't have to be at the defensive when you go apply for a job, when you accept a lunch work meeting, when you go to somebody's office. But these things do happen, and I'm a dad. I have 2 young girls. They're 12 and 9, but this is the world they're growing up in. Unfortunately, there are certain behaviors that they are going to have to face that I don't have to face as a male. It's not fair. It's not what I would like, but I also have to instruct them in what goes on out there. I don't want them not to know, not to be aware of what's happening.
Well, luckily, too, for them, though, like they're being born into a time where there is such a large change happening. Truth. And I think that, of course, there's a lot of fear around the technology age, and, there's all of that happening, but there's a lot of beauty in that too, and that there are groups of people coming together, and like I'm starting these things, healing groups, and there's this whole revolution happening, like kind of underground revolution now, but I think it's becoming much more popularized like every single day. And, just with politics and everything we have going on in the world, there's so many people starting to rise up and use their voices, and thank God we still have a certain level of freedom of speech in this country and of the press, and we're able to, as much as there is censorship in the news, at least we can still get our word out there on social media to our friend who can then tell a friend. So at least, as you were saying, I mean, we've come so far as women, and I think we're just going to keep pushing the boundaries of equality, and it's really a beautiful thing. So I think what's really important, like another thing my mom's helped me with over time, is just seeing the beauty in all things and looking at the good instead of dwelling on the negative. And of course there's so much negative, so it's hard to block that out, but like there's also so many beautiful things happening and so much great change and wonderful people to participate.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I feel that one of the simplest things that we can all do to change this system is to just decommodify the female body.
Yeah,
it's so simple. If we could all agree that like the naked female, young, fertile body is not a commodity. You know, both men and women, because when you're so deep in the system, the women inevitably, in moments when they're not conscious, participate in it, so they do use, we do use the power or the attractiveness or whatever, of the naked female body or the semi-naked body to get the rewards of the system, to get the job, to get the promotion, to get the attention, to feel powerful. And is it really true power? Like, what's the power, right?
Right.
So just being conscious, both, boys and girls, of course you're going to be attracted to the physical form, because that's like the visual aspect. There are so many more aspects to a person. But like, what do you do with the general notion of it, Like, is every naked, semi-naked female body you see in your face like a commodity? Does it make you want to buy the clothes that hang on it? Does it make you want to like buy the albums that are behind that cover?
For most people,
what's
it does.
going on?
For most people, it does. Yeah.
And doesn't that have some sort of like psychological
I think that's
effect
like
too?
The trigger we gotta turn off.
Yeah.
I'm interested also in the cross-dressing, if it's only for performance, if it's in your own life, if it's in your sexuality.
Well, in the cross-dressing, in my opinion, is really for performances. The main reason why I called the project Supergirl, I'm doing all these things, I hope, to impact some young ladies out there, young women that may be a bit, how do you say, that somebody has defined what a man is to them. I want them to know that there are different types of men. That not every man has to be a macho guy that is overpowering, overbearing, that's telling them what to do, that is the head of the relationship. I don't believe in those things. Also for my girls, obviously, so they see a role model, but also for men out there. So when I perform, I want people to see that you could be masculine, you could be strong, you could be powerful, but not necessarily appear that way. Most people associate femininity with having nails done, having a short skirt, and I perform that way. And now I've never felt like a woman. I've never been attracted to a man, but I do like to present that just so people see that not every man has to be this way, or what they think a man should be like. I mean,
That's so beautiful, just like playing around with the gender roles and just exploring and showing that, like, I just think that's so beautiful. That's so nice.
To me, what really matters, what really matters anyway, it's not what you're wearing or what you profess that you believe, it's really how you act, my opinion. I mean, if I'm here speaking with you, I'm not looking at you, not interacting with you, not being patient when you talk, what would it matter if I say I'm a feminist or I'm this or that? It's pretty much how you act, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's all, behavior. And again, I'm going back to what I was saying before, which is that we tend to behave the way that everybody around us behaves, because that's how we're conditioned. And then we also want to fit in. Like, it doesn't feel good to be a complete outlier and not have anyone be like you, so to speak. So, what we're familiar with is basically, a form of oppression of the male body and oppression of the male self-expression, because they're not allowed to use makeup as normative. They're not allowed to go in a miniskirt to work. They're not allowed to wear high heels and go to court and be a lawyer. The woman lawyer can wear the little power suit and the Louboutins. And to me, it's kind of obscene. The extreme gender differentiation that happens literally before birth, when you're pregnant and you have a gender party and you're it's a boy, blue, 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 it's a girl, pink, pink, pink. And then, the name changes from boy to girl, right? And then that extreme kind of separation of the genders begins before we're even born. I personally find kind of non-gender looks and behaviors much more attractive, and always did. Men who dye their hair different colors all the time, or present in ways that one would, I don't know, consider feminine. But that's all cliches. The feminine, masculine. It's really kind of the cliche definition. So when we say we both have feminine, masculine, yes, but if you read the list, it's wait a minute, that's all the cliches. The feminine is the passive and the creative, and the masculine is the maker and the aggressive. It's a what? So expressing it, if more and more men, like Marc Jacobs, and other designers, and some performers, have begun to go to these award shows and stuff, dressing in more beautiful outfits. But if it were to spread into society, now that would be liberating for men, and a man could choose without any issue or judgment what makes him feel like he looks better.
You are correct. Now, what happens, just as women may have the society brainwash of you need to be sexy, you need to be attractive, most men, the truth is, they need to be more manly from the beginning.
Right.
When you're little, if you sit a certain way, all your male friends will begin to call you a faggot or this or that, and you don't want to be seen as that. So what you said, it just takes, you have to be very independent to be different, because it can be very lonely.
Yeah.
And most people that are creative that I know have had a bit of challenging childhood, because you are different from the beginning. You don't relate to the way most people think. You almost can't help it, so you become a little bit cast aside, and you have to almost get used to not being part of a group or being on your own until you mature more, and then you have to seek out people like you maybe. But you have to be very strong to not succumb to the pressures that everybody's trying to put on you, to behave like everyone else, to think like everyone else. But I'm sure you guys have been individuals all your lives. I haven't met someone that just woke up and became that. It can be very lonely, and some people rather fit in, or maybe some people don't even have any interest in thinking for themselves. Maybe.
Yeah, but that's why the way that I see it is that it's not so much strength and weakness as consciousness, so the practice of meditation, the practice of finding open space, calm space, kind of expanding so you think before you do things. The more we practice that, the more we find freedom from problems that everyone has, like anxiety or stress or, whatever, sleeplessness or, insecurity. So it's not just about, rebelling right away, but in the process of finding that, space of opening up through like breath or whatever, open up time. Don't be a slave to time, right? And then you begin to think for yourself. And that's how you get to this place where you could become conscious of what, let's say, you wear and why you wear it, and if it makes sense.
No, 100%.
Right?
Now, the biggest probably influence that one has is really one's parents when one is growing up. Now, I know it took me a while to get to the state that I'm in right this second. Mm-hmm. And, if you happen to be lucky enough to be born into that situation, ideal. Most of us were not. So we have to find that on our own. But yes, if you're presented with things in a non-judgmental way, in a positive way, to deal with insecurities, with feelings, with roles, with desires, with everything, yeah, life can be beautiful. It is. Just that, if you don't have those guides as you're growing up, it can be extremely challenging as you make the mistakes maybe, and you figure out, wait a minute, I've been shown this example and I tried it, but I don't feel that good doing this. Let me try this instead. Those are the people that, I don't know if they're called seekers or whatever they're called, but you're trying to find your way in life and what makes you feel good, what resonates with you. Eventually you get there, hopefully. We're always trying to get there. And it's almost like we have to do away with everything that we were taught or everything that we have seen and then find ourselves, right? What works for us. So it's just a lifelong pursuit, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of like unlearning first, yeah. And also, it's like not a reboot, but like an update. Like we have a software and then there is an update and we take it in and then we're not the same. Exactly, we're functioning slightly differently. The way that you raise your daughters is not how your parents raised you at all. And same with me and my daughter. Like there's zero comparison. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah.
These girls are so fortunate, I believe. I mean, they're 12 and 9, right? They've been going to yoga for like 5 years. They know about meditation. They know about belly breathing. They've been vegetarians all their lives. I mean, I can't say certain things because here in this country it's illegal, I guess, but they're 100% comfortable with nudity. It's like they don't have prejudices. And I'm thinking, wow, they have it so good that they're so young and already so open, my opinion.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And that is the biggest influence we can have, even if one is not a parent, in the relationships that we have, whoever you touch, we have an influence.
Exactly.
I mean, I love to meet people that, after 10 years of not seeing me, they always remember my positive attitude or whatever it is. And it's like, you were able to influence that person in that way, just with your behavior, not because you're preaching, do this, do that, or I do this. Free country. But we do have an effect on people.
And that's another thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like that's another thing that my mom would always tell me is like, because she's an astrologer and we work together with that, and we're all about like looking at different generations. And it's interesting that I think her belief system that I've adopted is that we pass on to our children our best traits. So our children are the more evolved versions of ourselves.
It's beautiful,
and then that helps you release all of the patterns, the negative patterns from your past generations and your ancestors. So that's just what you're doing.
I totally believe that. I believe that. And I always encourage every woman to have a baby.
and every man?
It's different. I don't know. I'm not a man, and but like going through the experience of motherhood, pregnancy. I know, right?
You're doing your part. You're doing your part.
The most that I can.
Yeah, you're doing your part for sure. But especially for the women, because I meet so many women now who are kind of like again, giving so much emphasis on their career and making money, and they're successful, and I feel in a sense, they are a little bit co-opted, so they've taken on, they've empowered their masculinity at the expense of their femininity. And I always say, please, just like have a baby. You don't even need to change anything else, because having a baby will shift so much. You know, it's such like a heart opener. And then, as you say, like just by instinct, because there is a love there that's greater than self-love in most cases. So by that instinct, you heal yourself. You know, of those worst.
You heal
of those,
the wounds and the traumas of yourself and your past generations. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, and you shed and you let go all that like toxic, bullshit that's been stored in our DNA.
Exactly.
So it's one of the ways that we can get better.
Right.
You know.
Right. As a human race and as a as a person, individuals.
And unfortunately, in our world, again, patriarchy, right? It's like being a mother is not one's greater accomplishment. You meet a woman and you're like, hi, Baba, what do you do? Or like, what does your mom do? And no one says, well, I'm a mom, or I'm a single mom. It's like, no, I have to come up with something that like a man would do. Because I can't just say, right? And, to me, being a mom by far was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've done a lot of stuff in my career. And I've had like an accomplished, very accomplished work life. No comparison. I mean, every day, day in, day out, on my own, all these years, creating participating in a human's, self-creation. That's
so
the greatest work, But we have disempowered that. And we don't pay it, of course. We don't reward it financially, which is the most obvious way of disempowering it. So you're supposed to do it like on the side.
I know.
Of the other things that you do that are more important than like driving an Uber or whatever we have to do to make money.
So interesting to think about. We need to. That's another thing. We totally need to change the narrative around motherhood because it's a major problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but the type of person that does not value somebody being a mother, somebody being a parent, sometimes if you have to highlight the importance of that to anyone, that is their shortcoming, not the mother. You know what I'm saying? Some people cannot comprehend the role, the importance of being a parent. That's like pretty much, if anyone considers their Oscars or their Tonys or whatever, the books they've written, more important than their role as a parent, good for them. But I'm grateful that you see yourself as a mom first, because that's really, to me, it's the most important thing you can do. I hope, aside from anything I've done and everywhere I've been, I hope that one day my girls can say, oh, my daddy supported us, he loved us, he respected us. That right there is like the dream. I hope it gets to that point.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's a reward right there. Why else am I here?
Yeah, exactly.
There could be other things, but that's my part.
Yeah, there are other things, but basically, I feel that when you have felt that, when you have felt that feeling that you just described, then you can take that and channel it into everyone, like feeling that love, that happiness from just giving over and above. You can channel that into giving over and above to everyone, instead of only like what's yours, instead of like, okay, these are my kids and they're going to inherit me and I'm going to acquire even more things. So like my little tribe's going to be more powerful than any other tribe. And what, meanwhile, like the planet's falling apart.
Oh my God, it's so sad. It's so true.
Yeah, and it's so true, right?
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, so yeah, like feeling that's like the most amazing, for me, discovery, that we are capable of loving and enjoying giving so much, and like finding ways to share that.
Yeah, that's definitely the most.
No, but that takes stepping away from the selfishness that seems to be predominant in some things. One has to focus on the beauty and the kindness and the happiness. One has to find it and be very selective. And try to spread whatever it is that we need to spread.
Yeah, but that's part of our culture too. We're very like focused on singularity and oneness. And again, like I said before, like the age of Aquarius is coming, all about the collective. And like that's the time period, this next few thousand years that we're entering is a time of collective consciousness and unity and everyone coming together and relying on one another and building and sharing. And it's very beautiful, but it's very scary because it is just the beginning of this phase. So, you know, you still have some people that are very comfortable in like the old world and the old narrative and wars and fighting for the self and your own singular family, like you said, which is ridiculous. It's like, do you not realize there's so many other people out there? And I know that, like, you know, there's still a lot of inequality and, you know, fairness, global world peace doesn't happen overnight, literally, but like there is so much room for improvement in such a short period of time if we just could all, again, like share this beautiful, all the beauty with one another and share what we have or what we can share with one another and what we can offer. So it's exciting. Like, and I try to I try to see the beauty. And of course I have days where I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what's the point of, you know, anything and being alive and why are we here? And it's like, I think it's natural to have those moments, but like if, you know, if we can more of the time be positive and share that positivity and share again our strengths and share what we have to offer.
Right.
You know, whatever that is. If it's knowledge, if it's money, if it's food, if it's shelter, like everybody has something. And like, again, like you said, maybe it's just reaching one person. Maybe it's just one person on Instagram, who knows, that you start a conversation with that changes their trajectory of their next like 20 years of their life. Cause you know, life is just so precious and there's so much beauty and wisdom to be shared. And so I think that's why we're here, is to do that.
And to go back to what you started with, you know, when we feel depressed, desperate, you know, maybe neglected, unloved, misunderstood, all that, you know, the place to find healing is nature.
Yes.
So
100%.
The source where we come from before all the bullshit that we constructed to, like, you know, control it and edit it and curate it and censor it, the source is totally there for us.
Yeah,
you know,
it is.
Being in nature.
It is.
Without all the distractions and without the tech world. And, you know, having children, being in that space of, like, you know, just being in true intimacy without all the other feelings and thoughts and, you know, whatever fears that may come up based on our conditioning, that heals.
It's
so if you feel that, just like find the source. You know?
And it's so simple. Like even
simple, and it's free.
It's free. I'm saying, like, and you have no excuse. Like I live in New York City, and even there, like there are so many parks you can easily access where there are a multitude of private spaces and a tree just to sit under a tree or like sit on the water of a little pond. Like it's everywhere. There's nowhere in the world that doesn't still have some beautiful piece of nature available. And that's an unbelievable in itself, just because of where our world is and the world's on fire, natural disasters. But like, and that's the whole point of my work, is like learning to reconnect with nature, realize that we are a part of nature and honor that, like honor not only one another as humans, because you're part of nature just as I am, but also the grass and the trees and the rocks and the rivers and the ocean, because we're all made up of the exact same elements. And we were born of that, and that's where our bodies feel the most alive, whether you know that or you like it or not, or maybe if you've grown up in like a very commercial setting, like you're still going to feel the vibrations of nature when you spend time there. And it's been proven hundreds of thousands of times. Like we're just like, repeating like the facts of time right now.
Social gathering or like elite private club or party. Or I don't know what else, like show, entertainment, you know, whatever, even like group that will give you the same profound like healing. It's just kind of like lying on the earth and listening to, you know, the waves or, you know, the wind or, you know, just the the elements.
Exactly.
'Cause that's where we come
And
from.
Yeah, and for me, I love
Yeah.
being naked in nature. To me, is like the ultimate
Yeah,
freedom. And
it
so,
is,
and I've had
yeah.
so many people come to do photo shoots with me who have never been naked in nature before,
Yeah.
who have barely been naked again, like outside of their bedroom, and they every single time they're almost in tears, like, oh my gosh, that was the most liberating, beautiful experience in my life. Like, so if you know,
Because it's fucking natural. That's all.
exactly.
We've been like
it's the ineffable though. It's
divorced
like
from nature.
Exactly. That's where you reconnect. Like that's a mystical experience. That's where you reach transcendence, is being like at one and in your most natural state. So
Yeah, and like imagine if all of the, not all, but like a good number of all of us who are like congregated in these urban centers, primarily brought here for capitalist reasons, and who, by the way, which makes our vote not count.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Like imagine us all going out to like the rural areas and starting over, you know, and living in nature and creating like little hubs, like
little
the ones
farms,
we have,
little communities,
little communities, collectives.
Yeah, but it's happening.
I know.
It's happening slowly.
Yeah.
Like it's very exciting.
Yeah.
I always talk with my family. My mom cracks me up because she sends me every day like a new farm for sale in Vermont. She's like, "This is the one we're gonna buy, and we're
I'm
gonna
the
start
same.
growing."
Yeah,
okay, perfect. So you can join our farm if you want to move to Vermont. Or Greece. We're talking about our
we were talking about Lesbos.
So many plans on the horizon. We just are waiting for our angel investors, so we're putting that out there.
It will come.
It will come. It's coming. It's very exciting.
Like,
But the point is, there's so much land and beauty, and it's just it's
and
exciting.
healing.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel we're good. We have like a good closing point. Is there something you wanna add, or have I missed something?
No, we're cool. I mean, this it's been awesome.
Yeah,
okay, great.
I feel really good about everything we said.
Me
thank
too,
you so much for having me today.
Thank you for coming again. Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Of
Elsa.
course,
It was beautiful, and thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting me as your sex whisperer. And until next week, speak sex. Could make love incessantly, I would be God.